Mali's military rulers say they will return the country to civil rule in 2 years after Mali's August 2020 coup. The military has in several occasions failed to return the country to democratic leadership, leading to crippling sanctions. Military leader Colonel Assimi Goita signed a decree read out on state television on Monday, saying that the duration of the transition is fixed at 24 months, counting from the 26th of March 2022. The military seized power in an initial coup in August 2020 and failed to deliver on a promise to hold elections in February, prompting sanctions from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. ECOWAS has not yet commented on the 24-month decree adopted by Mali's military. The United States and former colonial power France are not pleased with the length of time Mali's transition to civil rule is taking. And Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, David Aworawo, joins me virtually now from Lagos for more on the transition agenda filtering in from Mali. Good to have you join us.
Thank you.
Let me start by getting your thoughts on this latest development in terms of the transition period, which is now 24 months. What do you make of this?
Well, developments in Mali are very concerning now because it is obvious that Goita and his team are determined to cling on to power for as long as. You recall that in the aftermath of the coup in August 2020, an 18-month transition program to civil rule was established. And they were supposed to, conduct elections and hand over in February of this year. But there was a second coup in 2021, which, altered and nullified all they had put in place up till that time. And that was what prompted the very stiff sanctions from ECOWAS, which, is well received by people like us. It will appear as if the leaders wanted to stay for as long as, maybe 5 years, maybe even 10 years. But the sanctions have been very effective. And, the leaders are now looking for, some way around it. And now they have announced, 2 years beginning from March 2022, which means March 2024. That timeline is too long. And, just as the United States and France have maintained, it is unacceptable.
But the military said that there is a general hope that this new deadline would lead to the general lifting of sanctions by ECOWAS. How do you think ECOWAS should react to this? There was a meeting of ECOWAS on July the 3rd. Bearing in mind that a previous deadline was also missed for elections was also missed by the military junta, and that's why the sanctions were imposed in the first place.
Yes, ECOWAS leaders have individually expressed dissatisfaction with the new timetable. In fact, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari also said that much just yesterday. And other ECOWAS leaders are of the same mindset that 2 years from now is far too long. I will imagine that ECOWAS will not accept to lift sanctions because the timetable is too long. Goita and his men want to cling on to power, which is unacceptable. You recall that in 1998, when our own General Abdulsalam Abubakar became head of state, he put in place an 11-month transition program, which was carried out successfully and terminated on the 29th of May, 1999. So no coup leader, or, no military leader anywhere, will want to deceive Africans or deceive the global community by saying that 2 years are needed to conduct a transition program. In any case, 2 years have already passed. So another 2 years will mean 4 years. So ECOWAS leaders are already expressing dissatisfaction, and that is the position I think they will stand by.
And you were right to know that 2 years has passed because this took place, the first coup was in August 2020. It's been a double coup since then. But how do you think that, because again, I would mention that it is interesting that you also mentioned Abdul Salam, who was able to put in place a transition to democratic rule in 11 months. How should ECOWAS use the Mali situation and development to set a precedence for a country like Burkina Faso as well as Guinea?
Yes, ECOWAS leaders have done well so far. The sanctions, people said sanctions don't work, but it is obvious now that sanctions are working. In fact, when the announcement was made yesterday, the first thing the leaders said was that we now hope that sanctions will be lifted, which means the sanctions are biting. The sanctions actually are the reasons why the leaders are looking for some midway position between the very long time they would have wanted and the 2 years they are setting. So my position is that ECOWAS leaders should maintain their current stance, their position, that there should be a new timetable for a shorter, period for handover to military rule. And they should, maintain the sanction, let the sanctions stay until Goita and his men come up with a shorter timetable. And that will send a message, a precedent, for those other two countries, Guinea and Burkina Faso, knowing that ECOWAS will not accept any attempt to cling on to power and to elongate stay of military rule in those countries.
And how optimistic are you that the longer these sanctions bite, especially the economy of Mali, that the military junta will come to the point where they say, look, we're going to have a shorter period of transition to democratic rule?
Well, not very optimistic. The way military men behave, they would like to, prove strong. But you have to have a country first before you govern. And when the economy is in tatters, before you know it, the kind of riots and revolts and social unrest that took place before they, used as a pretext for carrying out their coup will begin to take place in Mali. I'm sure they are aware of that. So while I'm not very optimistic, but I also know that it's not impossible that the grinding effects of the sanctions will compel them to, accede to a shorter time frame for a handover to civilian rule.
We'll continue to monitor developments in that country. I mentioned earlier there is a meeting of ECOWAS on July the 3rd. We would see how that also plays out, especially in terms of response to this. Thank you so much for talking to us, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, David Awarawo.
Thanks so very much.